Hi there. This is a guide on how to fix non-functioning keys on the Komplete Kontrol S61. This is the MK1. I believe it's similar but slightly different with the cables inside for the MK2. What you're going to see, this is probably the problem you're having with your keyboard. All your keys are working, but you'll have one or two keys that simply don't light up. This should fix that unless there's some sort of electronic issue. But I had this key not functioning yesterday and I fixed it by using this method. So I'm going to show you how to take this entire thing apart and how to clean the contacts to get your key working again. Hopefully that works for you. I also managed to break this pad over here in the process, but mine was already partially non-functional. One thing that I've been doing to kind of protect the knobs and the keys in certain cases is I'm using this body pillow and I'm just flipping the entire keyboard over. And so now you can see we're not going to be putting as much pressure on the knobs. Alright, so what do you need to know here? There are 3 different types of screws on the back here, and I would highly recommend getting a drill because using a drill is going to make this way easier. You should be able to get away with using basically 1 or 2 sizes of Phillips head. So here's how the screws work. Basically, our case screws are going to be these smaller recessed screws and these larger recessed screws. And you'll see that there is a slight size difference, but you're going to be able to leave these 2 rows on because those are to hold the actual key bed in. We're going to take these out second. But to take the case off, you're going to do everything at the front, everything along the side, and these back 2 rows. So let's get right into that. Let's do the big ones first. So if some of them didn't come out, if you get a little magnet stick, it'll make your life a hell of a lot easier. As I said, you may need 2 sizes of Phillips heads because this one's too big for these smaller ones, but luckily I have this from a screwdriver that'll work. And just to show you the difference quickly between the 2 screw sizes, I just pulled this out of one of the smaller holes, and you can see it is slightly thinner and slightly shorter than the screws from the other holes. So keep those separate. You'll be able to tell though if you do get them mixed up which is which. And of course don't forget about the security screw in the middle behind the sticker. Or the warranty void screw. It's a regular screw. You will feel the bottom case get loose. You'll know when every screw's out. You'll basically have very little resistance. But to actually take the bottom off, we're going to have to flip the keyboard over. Let's move this pillow. And there is a bit of a trick to taking it off. I'll show you that now. So you're going to prop it up and gently lift up the cover here. But be careful, don't lift it too far because you are going to have to disconnect a little cable right here in the top. And it's going to be zip tied, so you're going to need some good scissors. I wouldn't recommend using a razor because you could damage the other thing, the actual cable. But you're just going to have to cut this little zip tie in here, and then you can pull the connector back towards the back of the case to disconnect it. Which I will do now. There we go. That's what the connector is going to look like. It's like a 12-pin connector. Okay. There's another really important thing we're going to have to deal with, which is the mod wheel and expression sliders. And the way they're connected is really annoying. So, take the case off. You're gonna lift up at the back and you're gonna pull towards you to basically scoot it under the key bed. And then you're going to have to be very careful here, as I'll show you. So I actually recommend taking the case, the end here, putting it against the bottom case, and flipping it over like so. And that is going to show us... There we go. That is going to show us this board here for the sustain mod wheel controls, and Yeah, I'm not surprised mine wasn't working because I didn't connect it. To be completely honest, I would highly recommend pulling this board out. It's going to make your life easier when you're taking the key bed out. So we're going to do that right now. And once again, same Phillips head. Let's just pull this board out. And then you're going to have a ground screw here in the corner. Don't forget about that. It's going to be the only screw that's different. Now the screws you just pulled from this board here are going to be shorter than the smaller screws we pulled off the back, so keep these separate as well. And to remove this board, you're going to have to disconnect this connector first, which just seats straight down in to these little pins on the board, so make sure you pull it directly up. And then to pull the board out, it's fairly simple. Just be careful, you can even push from the other side, I think. There you go. And lift this board out. And there we are. As you can see, this is really going to make your life easier because now you don't have to worry about the top case. The next part can be a bit tricky. We're going to have to get the key bed off, which is very easy. It's just screws, but actually holding the keyboard to take the key bed off is the tricky part. So honestly, what I would do is I would use your left hand to hold this board here, flip it over. I guess put your knee there to hold the board in place. That kind of works. Okay. Once again, different screw for the key bed. Not going to be able to confuse those with other ones because they have a very wide head. Alright. You should just be able to lift the back case off. I believe. But keep in mind that this board is attached to the key bed. So you're still going to be holding on to it for a little bit. I would just lay it over like that. It should be fine. So the keys that I'm having issues with, because I put the pad on the wrong way, as you'll see, are these right here. If I flip the keyboard over, yeah, they're right in this area. What we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take this board out, which is very easy, but you have to do one thing, which is use a pair of pliers to, can you see it on there? It's going to be hard to see, but there's a little plastic retaining nub here. It kind of looks like a fish hook, the way it pokes through and grabs and resists from the board pulling off the opposite way. So you're going to use your pliers, and you're going to gently squeeze the sides of it. There we are. And that's going to allow you to lift the board up slightly, as you can see. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to pull it directly up from this edge here, because there's two connectors right here under these pins, and we're going to basically just pop them up. Yep, I could have made that a little more graceful, but that worked fine. You can see two connectors, and they seat right into there. Now, I'm only going to demonstrate with this board because it's the only one I have to take off, but it's the same for both of these. Now, I'm not going to use the drill to remove this board. It's a bit more delicate, so I'm going to use my iFixit toolkit with an even smaller Phillips head. Once you have your board unscrewed, it's basically just as simple as lifting it off. You're going to see a couple retaining pegs here, so you'll know that you're putting it back on the correct way. But that is basically what you're going to be looking at for both of these, and the reason that some of the keys aren't going to be working is because there's some gunk or corrosion under some of these contact points. Once you have your board off, you're going to see that you have this rubber membrane here, and that's going to have the contact points on the bottom of it. You'll see that there's a little smaller circle indent on the top. Let's see if I can show you that right there, which will help you make sure that you don't put these on backwards like I did. I put this little strip at the end on the wrong way. I don't know why I did that. So you're basically just going to peel these back to expose the contacts, and then you can see the little contact points in the membrane. I'd recommend using isopropyl alcohol, 91% or higher, on a paper towel, and you're going to use it to just scrub along these contact points, and it should remove, you should pick up some black gunk, some corrosion. And then once you're done with the entire board here, I would also recommend taking a Q-tip with isopropyl alcohol and cleaning off these little black contact points, just to make sure they're clean as well. So let's say you've done this for both boards, or just maybe you just want to do the one key. I'd recommend doing the whole thing because it'll help in the long term in case you have another key fail. I would just pull all these off and clean all that off, and then to put them back on. So to put the membrane back on, you're going to have these large nubs and these small nubs, and they're pretty stretchy. Make sure you don't stretch them too much because they will break. But to put it back on, here's my recommendation. Here's kind of the process I developed. Start with one of the big pegs and take a toothpick, and you're going to gently poke through the end just to get it started. It's going to be a very tight fit. And you can see here at the bottom now, we've started to feed through that little rubber peg. Now I would take the Q-tip and very gently put it in the hole here on the back. Just poke it through. Don't poke too hard because you could rip it off, but you can see that completely secured it in there, and we're going to repeat the same for every single little rubber peg. There you go, that one started, poke through. You can do all of the large ones first and then worry about the small ones after. That's what seemed to work for me. Okay, another one there. Okay, now all of the large pegs have been inserted. You can see it looks a bit wavy right now, and that's because we still have to do the small ones. And for the small ones, you can basically just take your toothpick, line it up with the hole, poke it through. There we are. Once again, be very gentle to make sure that you don't rip anything in the process. And you can now see that that rubber strip has been correctly secured back onto the board. If you don't think it's fully secured, just flip the board over and you can make sure that all of your little rubber pegs are put all the way through. Basically now we're just going to reassemble. I already did this entire other board and I did the rest of this board as well, clean them all off. Now you can put the board back on the key bed, and you're going to make sure that your little retaining holes are down here at the bottom. And those are going to fit right over these little plastic pegs. There we are. Obviously, with both of these boards off, it's a pretty good opportunity to blow the dust out of the keys as well, so take advantage of that. Use some canned air or a vacuum with some sort of dusting brush. Okay, the board is reattached. Make sure you take advantage of this time to clean anything you'd like. A lot of dust can build up in the springs back here. Now we're going to reattach this board here. Line up this hole on the back of the board that's slightly to the right with our little peg. There we are. And that should also line you up with the connectors at the front. Push them down at the same time. There we are. You'll know the board will be pretty secure. Okay, let's now reattach the bottom case. Now lining the key bed up with the bottom of the case again can be a bit tricky, so here's what I would recommend doing. I would recommend flipping the board over once again. Gotta hold on to that thing again. Alright. And it's gonna go this way. It's basically going to slide all the way right in this case, because that's going to leave space for the touchpad on the left. Find a little set of like mounting points, little column things that are closer together, and line them up with the ones that are closer together on the bottom of the board. You'll feel it'll gently kind of sit in there. There we are, I believe we're lined up. Yeah, it'll kind of sit in there pretty well. And then once again, you are going to hold on to the key bed and the case. You're gonna gently, oh, I already fucked it up. Here we go, flip it over. I guess once again, I can use my left knee to hold that board up. Back to the drill. The ones with the wider, flatter heads are the ones that are used to secure the key bed to the bottom of the case. So that should be it. Everything should be secured back in there. One of these posts I think is shot. This one right here didn't want to screw in, but whatever. Alright, grab the keys here with your right hand. Gently flip back over. Alright. Yep, secured pretty well. Now we are going to get back into this top case. Flip it back over. We're going to have to do our touchpad first. So you kind of need a pretty wide space to work with this terrible touchpad connection. How about like this? Okay, flip the touchpad back over. Make sure that your ground wire is pulled up so you're not pinching it under the board. And then you can feel on the other side where the touch sliders are to make sure the board has been seated correctly. I'm just going to do this one by hand again. Secured. Okay, and don't be like me. Remember to reattach this connector here, because that's why mine probably wasn't working at all. Let's line that up. Okay, connector's reattached. Now, this can be a bit tricky. I wouldn't grab here by the super thin part on the top case. I would try to put your hand across the entire bit, because it's kind of flimsy. You can see I'm flipping it over here. Yep, that's pretty good. And then to get the top case back on, line it up with the key bed, gently scoot that front part under the keys, and scoot it back like that. But do not forget to lift it up and reattach this top connector here. Okay. And if you are concerned about anything you did at this point, this would be the time where you can take your keyboard, put it back on your stand, plug it in, make sure everything works. I'm fairly confident that I didn't screw anything up because I actually, reconnected everything this time. So I'm just going to go ahead and put the entire keyboard back together with screws, attach the top and bottom case. Okay, I'm back. I noticed that there were 3 or 4 plastic standoffs in the case that were broken, and I attempted to glue them back together with Loctite, which I know is not designed for plastic, and it's probably not ideal. I think 2 of the standoffs actually held up from me gluing it, and then at least one of them completely snapped and didn't work, but missing 1 standoff's not a big deal. Now the real question is, did I fix the pad and the keys? And I'm pretty sure I did. Here is the first test back. Okay. Yeah, so this is still messed up. It probably has some electronic issue. This is exactly what it was doing before, where it would just kind of glitch out. So it's probably actually an issue with the sensor. How about the keys? I think it was this set that was giving me issues. So I'm pretty sure we're all good. Yep. Back to normal. So the keys that weren't triggering are now triggering correctly. Our octave buttons work, which is great. And yeah, it registers it there. Perfect. This is technically fixed. Hopefully that's helpful to you. If you're having some dead keys on your keyboard, it might help you get in there, clean it out, and make it work again. One thing I want to quickly point out is you saw me using a drill in the video, and I highly recommend not using a drill. It just over tightens, and with the crappy plastic standoffs in the case, I don't think it's worth it. I'm going to put a warning at the beginning of the video to not use a drill when you're doing this, just so people know, but in the video, obviously, you see me using a drill. I just don't recommend it. It sucks to use a screwdriver, but it's probably worth it unless you have a device where you can set torque But yeah, thanks a lot for watching. Have a good day.